YouTube, Rain here, and these articles are something that I wanted to go over because LSV has been my limited guide for looking into sets for the longest time until I started being able to look for myself. I just wanted to see how he thought the cards matched up in comparison to how I thought the cards matched up. So Deflecting Palm, I would probably give this card a 1.5. It can't kill creatures. There are occasional times when it's okay, but I really don't like this card. I gave it a 2.5. I'll read why real quick because that's pretty far off from what I gave it. Triggers prowess, and if you're set up for racing. So if you're a slower deck, he says don't play it, but if you're a tempo deck, he says play it. Okay. Weapon Master. This is one I've been very impressed with, and you have to play around it. If you're playing against blue, red, white decks, this is going to be a card they have, and it's just a blowout. So I saw the 3.0. That's about what I'd give it to. I would agree with that completely. Yeah, he agrees with generally what I say about it. Crane Technique, I'd give this a 4.0. It's an amazing finisher, and it can be used on defense. It's a little slow on defense, but it's an amazing finisher. Nice. Got it. Yeah, Flavor Judge. What I said about High Spire Mantis, 5 mana, 3/3 flying's already great. Trample gives it some extra value. 3.5, but on the upper end of that. Cool. Nice. Ascendancy. I said it's not a bomb. I've played it a bit, so oh, dang it. I got to see the rating. But yeah, I would give it a 3.5. That sounds about right. One step below a bomb, and a very, very solid card. Jeskai Charm. This is a harder one to rate. I'd give it a 3.5 for its power in aggressive decks. But if you're playing it in a controlling deck, it goes down to like a 2.5. Cool, got the rating. Mantis Raider. It's pretty easy to remove, but 3/3 for 3 with Flying, Vigilance, and Haste should be powerful. I'd give this a 3.5. Haha! See? That's what happens when you play Limited a lot. I swear to you, I didn't actually look at these beforehand. This is the first time I've seen this. First time I've loaded this page. Master the Way. 1.5. 5 mana for draw a single card. If you top deck it, it's just bad. There are some situations where this card can be good, but the majority of decks, like 90% of decks, don't want this, especially at sorcery speed. Ew. What? 3.5? Wait. Okay, Luis. Okay, so one thing you should know about LSV is he loves drawing cards. And he overvalues it a bit. I wouldn't say this is a 3.5. You could maybe give it a 2.0, and in some decks a 2.5, but geez, 3.5? Okay. I just call that pulling a Louise. Narset, I gave her a lot of shit early on in the set. A 6 mana 3/2 first strike hexproof is lower than it should be at Mythic, especially. Like, this should cost 4 or 5, and I'd be a lot happier with it. But as the set's gone on, I've kind of slid back into, okay, she's a pretty decent card. Nothing incredible like Mantis Raider or Ascendancy, but she should do a decent job. Good abilities. I'd give her either a 2.5 or a 3.0. Probably somewhere between those. Okay, you gave the 3. Yeah, generally what I was saying, some assembly required, which is exactly how I described this card, because she's just not good on her own. Sage of the Inward Eye. I've seen this card like 3 or 4 times. I've played with it once. 5 mana, 3 power flyers, 3/4 flyers are already acceptable. And this guy just says, let's turn on the clock, and with lifelink, if I have another guy that's attacking, you're just going to have a really hard time racing me. It's not impossible, but he just turns on the clock really well. I am going to give him a 3.0 though. No, maybe a 3.5. This one's a little harder. I'm in the end going for like a 3.25, honestly. 3.5. Yep. Nothing surprising there. Oh, shit. Warden of the Eye, I would already very solidly give this a 3. I saw the rating, yeah, but let's be honest, 5 mana, 3 threes that draw you a card, or specifically a chosen card from your graveyard, are amazing in the late game, great in controlling decks, great in aggressive decks, and 5 mana, you're only paying 1 extra for this ability, and that's just great. He's nothing insane, but he's very, very solid. Oh yeah, is it Chronarch? The flashbacks. Oh, he picks up artifacts and planeswalkers too. That's something I really didn't consider. Winterflame. This card has been amazing for me. Well, not amazing, but very, very, very good. I would give it about a 3.0. I'm a little hyped on this card. It might be a 2.5 in his rating, but I like this card a lot. Morph guys are so easy to kill with this, and you so don't mind playing this to kill a morph guy with tapping a creature as well. 3.5. Oh, geez. Okay, it triggers prowess, which is something I don't really talk about with Winterflame, which is very important. Yeah, I'll agree with the 3.5. It's a little higher than I would normally give it, but just because it doesn't answer a lot of 2/3s and a lot of just creatures in the format, but it should be fine. Blinding Spray I wasn't impressed with when I played it. Yeah, he says generally the same thing. I wanted to test this card because it draws you a card, but the problems are it's expensive, it's a little obvious. If you're behind, all this does is prevent some damage, and if there's like a really tied board, then this can blow them out, but honestly, I would give this a 2. Maybe a 2.5 in some decks, but probably a 2.0 would be my personal rating. Cancel I give a 1.5 very easily. With Morph in the set, you just don't know what you're countering. On the draw, this is very awful. You can't even counter Morph cards when they come down turn 3. When you're on the play, it's a little better, but there are so many cards just tacked on, can't be countered. Cancel doesn't prevent you from changing a losing board, which is true for all counter spells. So if you're behind and you draw this, it's just not going to do anything for you. So I give it a 1.5. Oh. Yeah, he gave it a little higher, but I think given the play of the format I've done, I can safely say this is not a format where cancel lands. Clever Impersonator. Clone effects have typically always gotten a 3/5 just for their versatility, and their weakness being that they're not great because they can only be as strong as the strongest creature on the battlefield. This one interacts well with planeswalkers, also copies anything including enchantments if you need to, like Ascendancies maybe. So I could see giving this a 4-0 in limited. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 4-0. Alright, 3-5. I think it's pretty close between the 3-5 and 4-0 category. Creeping Chill, 3.0. It's 3 mana, it draws you a card. It taps a creature at instant speed and doesn't make it untap during their next turn. So it prevents it for 4 combat steps for doing anything, and you don't even lose value out of the tempo you're playing. Awesome. Yep. Dig Through Time. I expect Luis will hype this a little more than I do. I think he'll give it a 3-5, but I'm going to give it a 2-5. It's just inconsistent. While it does reliably draw you 2 great cards, it takes so long to do it. But it's fine. I play it half the time. Ooh, geez. Much lower than I thought, man. Alright, I'm just reading what he says. Okay, I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I could see giving this a 2-0, but I'm going to give it a 2-5. It's between 2-0 and 2-5 for me. Disdainful Stroke. This is worse than Cancel. He gave Cancel a 2.0. Simply because Morph is in this format. Jeez, he gave it a 2.5? What? I'm sorry, I just don't agree with this. There are so many high value priority things that you want to counter that can just slip under this with Morph. If you're behind, it doesn't stop you from being behind. The 2 mana, it's easier to cast than Cancel, but geez, I'm just not a fan. Yeah, I don't agree here. Just the way I've seen the format played. Dragon's Eye Savants. Very good at holding off the early game. Not an irrelevant upside when you flip it up as a morph creature. And can be a 2-power guy if you're ahead. I'm going to give this somewhere between a 2-5 and a 3-0. Okay, and he likes controlling decks, likes drawing cards, so I see how he puts this up to a 3-0. Same reasoning here, notice. Embodiment of Spring. This is normally a card I would give a lower rating to. I want to be very careful about how I slide this down. Basically, it's a 0-3 for 1, and if you're playing green, you can ramp yourself and fix your mana. This has been a card that has impressed me, and it will be a card that is going to be very important in Sealed, because color fixing determines just what colors you can splash and what colors you can play and how consistent your deck is. So I'm gonna I keep saying somewhere between, but really it's hard to label these. I'll give it a 2-5. It's never really winning you the game, but it should be very, very, very solid in blue-green decks. Early blocker. Yep. Force Away. Okay, I didn't see that number actually. This is a card that I am very happy with. When they flip up their Morph guy, if it doesn't have some sort of enter the battlefield effect, it's so good to just force away their Morph guy. They lost the turn flipping the Morph guy, and just, geez, it's so much like a double tempo swing against those decks. In addition, the Ferocious, if you can get it off where you loot, it's very, very nice, especially in aggressive decks. This card is great. Filtering out your hand to get the right balance of lands and spells is even more important in aggressive decks, but this should be very decent in any deck. Unsummon in a world of expensive monsters, yep. Great Wither against Prowess. Resets Outlast. And can help cast Delve. Yeah. Agree. Completely. He doesn't really mention Morphall too much, but this is good against Morph too. Glacial Stalker. It's something I found making the cut more than I wanted to. It's an okay guy in the late game, just as a 4/5 for Morph on 5 or 6 mana. I'd give this a 2-0. Geez, 3-0? This has been a little more mediocre in the scheme of what you can morph in terms of expensive guys for me. I wouldn't give this a 3-0. I would maybe give it a 2-5. Icy Blast, yes. Finally a card I'm curious to see what he thinks of. I'm giving this a 4-0. It prevents their creatures from attacking for 2 of their combat steps with Ferocious. It gets your creatures 2 free attacks in, so it's 4 combat steps worth of tempo and just insanely powerful. Yeah, easy 4-0. If you don't have Ferocious, this goes down a lot in value to around like a 2-0, maybe a 1-5, but it's so easy to get Ferocious in the right deck, and it's so powerful when you do. He gave it a 3-5. I don't know, I'm pretty happy giving it a 4-0. But I suppose I see why he's saying this. I'm giving it a 4-0 still. Jeskai Elder. This is a card that's gone a bit down from just seeing this card and thinking the effect it will have versus them just dropping stuff that can deal with it. Like Dragon's Eye Savants, so many high toughness creatures that just get in the way of this and it does nothing. That said, it's still a pretty decent card. I'd say 2-0. Cool. Hit the 2-0. I thought he was going to give it a 2-5, honestly. You have to have tricks, yep. Alright, Jeskai Wind Scout. I give a 2-5. It's an early flyer. You play a banner next turn, you play any non-creature spell, it starts getting in the air for 3 pretty early, which is really impactful. And it can trade up with a flyer later on. Definitely a 2-5. 3-0. So, okay. I don't know. I still think the 1 toughness is a little rough against cards like Arc Lightning. The Barrage of Rubble red card, I don't remember the name. This 1 toughness is relevant more than I thought it'd be against red decks. But against some other decks, it can rise up to that 3-0. Heh, flying, rise. Carrier Spell Snatcher. 4 mana 3/3s in blue are very good. Blue doesn't get these bodies very often. The upside is good when the board is tied or you're ahead, but not when you're behind. You just can't afford to hold up the 6 mana for something that may not turn the board around. So overall, I'd give this either a 3-0 or a 3-5. Probably, it's really a little dependent on your deck, how much you're going to be ahead when you have 6 lands out versus how much you're not going to be. I'm going to give it a 3-0. Just because I'm not as big a fan of this ability as a lot of people will be. Hill Giant, 4 pretty high. 6 mana is too much, yep. Some matchups and decks where this overperforms, just like I was just saying. Mistfire Weaver. This is a card that I think he might overrate a little versus what I would. 4 mana for a 3/1 flyer is a little underwhelming. I'm sure the power is more important on the flyer, but this 1 toughness can cause it to get blown out by removal and just lower power flyers. And against lower power flyers, this is much more vulnerable since hexproof won't even stop that. The potential for a blowout is here, where you get a 3/1 flyer that just prevents their removal card. But I'm going to give it a 2/5, but I can easily see somebody giving it a 3/0. But I just think it's a little slow. The effect is good, but the body's underwhelming. You know what? I'm going to give it a 3/0. Hexproof is really relevant. In sealed, this is going to counter removal more than often than not, and you're going to start swinging in the air, and they sometimes can't deal with that, especially with morph. 3/5, jeez. I'm actually not sure if I agree with the 3/1. Okay, yeah, I do agree that a 3/1 flyer is better than a 3/3 on the ground, depending on what that 3/3 is. But this 1 toughness, I'm going to stick to my 3/0. I see what you're saying, but I just am not in complete agreement. Monastery Flock, if your deck needs a defensive thing, if your deck is a Tamura deck and you're just rushing the ground and not hoping to not die to flyers, this should play a role. This can also have power if you need it to, and surprise their race. So I consider it more of a sideboard card, but there are certainly a lot of decks that are fine playing one of these. I'm going to give it... These have been rating higher than I thought. I'm going to give this a 1.75, maybe a 2/0, just because it can have power. I'll give it a 2/0. 3/0. Jeez. Oh yeah, Luis is going to build a Treasure Cruise Monastery Flock deck. That sounds just like him. Jeez. The big difference he pointed out is if they have removal for your morph guy, this can flip up and prevent that, but you're not gaining much from preventing that. And most things that are removing morph creatures are already doing something else or doing it at little or no cost. 3/0. Jeez. No, I'm sticking to my 2/0. Mystic of the Hidden Way? Jeez, if Monastery Flock got a 3/0, what's Mystic get? This guy is pretty great. I've seen him do nothing but go up in my rating as I played against him more and played with him more. Starting clock on turn 4 or anytime you have 3 available mana up to just start ticking in for 3 every turn is a very relevant clock, one they'll have to deal with. They can't block with their morph creatures, but you can't block morph creatures with him. So he's naturally much more aligned to a tempo aggressive deck. But that works really well with Jeskai especially. And this guy should be great in any deck he's in. I would say if like Mistfire Weaver was getting a 3/5, this should also get a 3/5. Well, I mean, Mistfire Weaver doesn't block as well. I just don't agree that Mistfire Weaver is better than Mystic. I think they're about on the same level. Pearl Lake Ancient should be a 4/5. It's slow, but this format is slow. It has flash and can't be countered, which means that it's going to act as removal. In addition, it has prowess, so it's a monster to block. And lastly, it has a free way to dodge removal. This card is insane. I've only seen it once, but geez, it took over the game so quickly. Because it's slow, I'm giving it a 4/5 and not a 5/0 though. Wow, 3/5. Prowess on a 6/7 makes it hard to block this, like insanely hard to block this. Yeah, semi-hexproof. Ambushing attackers, resistance to removal. He gave it a 3/5 instead of my really high 4/5 because of the speed. But I think that's not going to be incredibly bad for this format. He'll be stuck in your hand sometimes, but boy, when you see him in your hand, you can just be like, I just have to stall to 7 lands. Doesn't matter what my opponent does, I have inevitability in this game. Which is something a lot of decks think they'll have, but you just have it with this. Like, I can't see what they can do to beat you once you play this. Maybe a Sarkhan. Quiet Contemplation. This card has been very good in the deck I played it in. Had a lot of spells in it. This effect is quite strong, and if you have a good amount of really good spells, this card is great. Don't forget that you can also use it with artifacts, planeswalkers, anything, and it triggers prowess when it comes in as well. So either a 3 or a 3/5. I'll give it a 3. Jeez. Like, in the right deck, this card is insane, and it's not hard to get the right deck with this card. I don't know. I was impressed with this. Riverwheel Aerialists. 4/5 flyer for 6 is already pretty great. Giving it prowess just means that it's even better at finishing off games, harder to block, and just is an amazing creature. I'm going to give this a 3/5. It's a very, very solid finisher. 4/5 flyer is pretty big, yep. Benefits from lifelink. Blocks very well. On the turn it's played because you're not going to play a spell that turn. Yeah. Scaldkin. This card is very, very slow, but with Jeskai decks you can often just use the flying body. I wouldn't play this in a non-red deck, but it should be okay. I'm giving this a 2/0. I'm just really not a fan. It takes 7 mana to get a shock effect. If you really need it, that's just unacceptable. It's really more like a 4 mana 2/2 fire, which isn't all that great. 3.0. You know what? I'll concede this one to him. If you're playing blue-red, it's pretty much making your deck every time. Just as a 4 mana 2/2 flyer with some upside. I'll agree. Scion of Glaciers? Jeez. Don't even get me started. This guy is amazing. They made him a 2/5, which is an amazing blocker the turn he comes down. Like, they won't be able to really get through this, and he'll be able to trade off pretty easily. And once you untap with this, he triggers Ferocious for 2 mana on your defensive creature. He can get through for 6 damage if you really need him to. And he's just amazing at blocking and attacking and can make headaches. 3/5, very easy. I'm sticking to my 3/5 on this one though. This card is amazing. Set Adrift. I'm not a very big fan, simply because of the sorcery speed. I'm giving this... It takes away so much power to make this sorcery, and there's no reason it shouldn't be an instant, especially uncommon. I'm giving this one a 2/5. Sorcery hurts so much, and yeah. Delve makes it a little inconsistent. Jeez. I was off on this one too. That's a little rough. No, I'm not changing on this one either. Sorcery's just too big for me to look past. Maybe I'm just too rewarded with Griptide. I can see this card being better than what I gave it, but I'm not giving it a 3-5. I don't think it's as good as like solid removal cards in this format, or even River Wheel Aerialists. I just think that's an inaccurate comparison. Singing Bellstrike. I'm a fan of this card. Even though the format is slow, it's a relevant card even into like turn 10. And sometimes I'll just need it. I've been leaning more away from this card. I'm going to be honest. I played with and against it more, and oftentimes my opponent can just afford to pay the 6 and use his turns 6 through 8, just playing a land and untapping his guy if he needs to, or just untapping it and saving it for blocks, and this becomes irrelevant. So those situations have just been all too frequent, and the situation where they pay 6, untap it, and just save it as a blocker just makes this awful. I'm bringing this down to a 2-5, maybe a 2-0. Yeah, aggro decks, or this card's going to be great. Yeah, pretty much agreement there. Stubborn Denial, absolutely not a main deck card. You don't counter creatures. It's definitely a sideboard card. Negate was a sideboard card, and this is... You could say it's up to debate whether it's better or worse than Negate, but I like Negate more as a sideboard card in Limited than this. Give it a 1.0, maybe a 1.5, just because of how many good combat tricks and blowout cards there are. So 1.5. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Nothing really surprising there. Talrand scheming can lead to some insane draws. If you have a Delve card in your hand, you have a scheming in your hand, just play scheming on 2, a ridiculous Delve card on turn 3 or 4, and you can just win the game so quickly. In Delve decks, this should be very much a player, but non-Delve decks, it doesn't make up for the fact that you play a card with the selection. I would say 3-0 in Delve decks and 2-0 in normal decks. Dark Ritual for Delve cards. Increase your card quality. Yeah, I agree. It's not worth the card. Turbo Delve deck would need this pretty badly. Okay. I'm just gonna die to this card at some point, and I'm sure everybody will one time. Somebody's gonna play this and just do some insane 7-card draw, but I agree with this. It's one of the reasons Delve decks aren't that great. It's just because these cards aren't that great. 1,000 Winds. Jeez, what a card. 6 mana, 5/6 flyer already is amazing. And the potential for a one-sided, what's that card? Upheaval effect? Just return all their creatures. Okay, it's not technically upheaval, but you get the point. In Limited, it's a pseudo upheaval. If they attack with all their guys, you're just like, flip this, swing for 5, you have to recast all your creatures and deal with a 5/6 flyer. The game is over if you manage to get that off. And just as a 6 mana 5/6 flyer, this guy's amazing in Limited. Gonna give it, it's either a 4-0 or a 4-5. I'm gonna give it a 4-5 just because of its versatility, in addition to 2 very powerful effects. Ah, he used Upheaval too. Yeah, it's not hard to play around, that's true. 7 mana is very expensive. Most Morph guys will flip up before this. Yeah, mostly agree. No, I completely agree with that. Treasure Cruise. This is a very Luis-themed card. He seems to be a decent fan of Delve. I think this can be an okay card for you to just play for value in some slow decks. But most of the time the decks I have, it doesn't make the cut. But that might be a mistake on my end. I haven't given this card a lot of testing or credit. I just draw away from the base 8 casting cost, even though it has Delve, and the sorcery speed. So personally, I would say this is a 2-0, but knowing Luis, this is probably going to be a 3-0 on a scale. What? Oh my god. Oh my god. Wait, what? 4-5? You're telling me you would rather have a Treasure Cruise in your deck than 1,000 wins? That you think this is more powerful than this? No, absolutely not. No way in heck. Okay, let's read, because sometimes he just talks about the ratings as like, this is how many cards I'll draw with this, but the average number of treasure cruises he'll be playing where the rating goes. It doesn't necessarily fuel future cruises. You have to start playing the cards in your hand after you play your 8-drop cruise. Yeah, 2-0. Exactly what I gave it. Okay, so this was a bit of a troll rating. I just had to read it. Water Whirl in an aggressive deck. This card is pretty insane. Instant speed, bounce 2 creatures. It's still slower than Into the Void, but let me check. I'm pretty sure Into the Void. Not Songs. MTG. His sorcery speed? Yep. So playing this at the end of their turn, suddenly they just lose the game. This is an incredible blowout in tempo decks, but slower decks really aren't looking to play this. I give it a 3-0 or a 3-5, depending on, just because it's bad in really slower decks, but it's not awful in those decks. I give it a 3-5. Nice. Yeah, instant speed, bouncing 2 creatures should get you mana efficiency. Creatures are better when attacking. Yep. Very much agree. Blue is a very aggressive color in this format. Though you can do like this control aspect, I do think blue is better on the offense. Weave Fate. Instant speed, triggers prowess, draws you 2 cards, only 1 more mana than Divination, and I actually like having this in the format more than Divination, because 3 mana slots are clogged with morph creatures, so oftentimes you're playing a morph creature turn 3, and you'll like Weave Fate at the end of their turn, holding up a threatening, you're flipping the morph guy, maybe. This is just going to get you value. I'm a very big fan of this card. 3-0. Drawing 2 cards isn't an incredibly powerful effect, but this will make the cut almost every time. Wow, Luis. Drawing cards did not get you the rating that I thought it would. Yeah, it doesn't go in every deck. No, it does go in most decks. Especially decks with prowess. Yeah, synergy with Morph because you can threaten flipping your Morph guy, but actually just draw cards and get advantage. Counter spells. I'm not a fan of counter spells in this format, but it does synergize with prowess, as I said. Yeah, it does draw 2 cards. Sandbar 1.0, if you really need the 2-drop and you just can't live through the early game. Now, 0.5, 1 toughness is just too rough against the 1/1s in this format, which Mardu has a lot of. 0.5, maybe a 0. Jeez. This has a matchup where this card is just awful. It's miserable. Mardu decks just wreck this card out of the water, make it look like awful trash. Well, I do agree that 2 costs are more important in a deck filled with Morph because they can much easier force through damage or prevent them from attacking you in turns around 4. but not even 5 because morph creatures typically have the flip up cost on 5. I don't agree. No, I don't agree with this. Whirlwind Adept. So this is an awkward card. 5 mana for a 4/2. This trades with morph just as base. However, the thing that accelerates it from pretty much unplayable to playable in certain decks is the hexproof line and the prowess line. Both of these together is a pretty nice wombo combo. This was set a little higher. They can't stop your tricks, and when you play tricks you can blow them out, but he still has... I like my prowess creatures to have more toughness than attack, simply because they'll live through the combat tricks more often. So this doesn't... It trades more often than I want it to. However, the combination of hexproof and prowess is pretty good. It's very slow, but 2/5. 5-drop without morph, yep. It would be nicer with morph. Can't block well, yeah, I agree. Doesn't have impressive stats, I agree. Immune to spells, only matters if your opponent wants to kill it. But with prowess it can do some things. This really depends on your deck, very much so. It doesn't make the cut most of the time with my decks, so maybe giving it a 2/5 is very optimistic. I think this caps out at about a 2/5 in some decks. Wow. Top 5 blue commons and Treasure Cruise is on the list. Force Away, I agree, is the best blue common. Wind Scout, I'll agree, is the next best blue common. It's just so easy to swing for 3 very early on in the air, and it's so easy to trade this off later if you need to. Mystic, I'll agree, third best common. Very, very, very hard to race this card. Chill, I'll agree, is the 4th best. Tempo play that gets you a lot of value because it draws you a card. Cruise, I will not agree, is the 5th best, but let me find out what I would say the 5th best common is, just so I can say that with certainty. Know a lot of uncommons I'd like to put in that slot. I would put Weave Fate in that slot. Where is it? Right here. Just because of the synergy it has with Morph and Prowess, and instant speed incremental advantage. Even if it's not powerful incremental advantage, this card is going to be great. And I think it's better than Treasure Cruise in a lot of decks. It's better in aggressive decks than Treasure Cruise. It's only a little worse than Treasure Cruise in the controlling decks because it's nice to have instant speed to hold up counter spells. So yeah, this is just typical Luis, like it draws cards, so I put it in the top 5. Okay, that's my impressions of the blue ratings, as well as I think he did Jeskai this week, or today, yep, the Jeskai cards, and what I thought of them, what I thought the strengths and weaknesses were, and how it reflects with somebody who, you know, honestly is probably just a better Magic player than I am. I think I'm actually getting there, but haven't been to a Pro Tour yet, so I can't factually say that yet. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and maybe found some things out about the way I like to play limited, and maybe some cards that I was underrating or maybe some cards I was overrating. If you agree with his explanations more, that's perfectly understandable. He's a great Magic player. I like to think that playing the format has given me a little more experience on what has impressed me and what is not, but at the end of the day, this guy has been playing Magic longer than I have. He's been playing at a more competitive level than I have. But I think I overlapped with him quite a bit. It just shows you generally rating cards is not incredibly hard once you get to be pretty good at Magic. Alright, thank you for watching. I'll be going over his other review that he has up right now, White, and I think he did Mardu. So, y'all have a great day.